Ben, Pappas, good to see you guys. I am so pumped for this interview. So we are here for everyone watching. We are here with Alexander Pappas, or Alex, or Pappas, and Benjamin Lee Tan. Is it Lee?
Definitely not Lee.
Okay.
I'm glad you don't know my middle name though.
Young Kong.
Oh, something like that.
So we have Ben and Pappas. These guys are both from Hillsong Young and Free, which is obviously a church based in Australia, but tour everywhere. And so Pappas is one of the worship leaders for Young and Free, and Ben is the guitar player / you also MD, don't you?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I co-MD with me and Ferby MD. Ferby's the player.
Okay, nice. Throughout COVID, with Goodwood Audio, we've been trying to upskill you guys that are watching and try and leave COVID. It will end. We're going to try and leave COVID with more skills than when we went into it. And so this is part of that. So we're going to talk to Pappas and Ben today. These guys have tons of insight, tons of practical experience on working together as a cohesive team in Young and Free and church services on the weekend and all that type of stuff. And so we're just going to get into it and basically see how we can work together as an MD / musician with a worship leader / front man if you're in a band, and how to get the most out of that process. So welcome, guys. Thank you again so much for being a part of this. I really wanted to, start with the whole Young and Free thing, because you guys are touring, not during COVID, but typically speaking, you guys are touring, you write your own music, you produce all, if not most, if not all of your music as well. And then you also record all of your own music. So you guys do everything, right? Am I missing anything there?
We also dance to our own music. We don't hire any other dancers. We actually do it all ourselves.
I remember that because I applied to be a dancer and I quickly got turned down. I think it wasn't because I wasn't good enough. I think
No.
What was the reason again?
Well, yeah, Ben actually said you might steal some of the spotlight from him, so he vetoed it.
Yeah, I'm not very good.
And as MD, it's tough, man. I'm sorry.
He made the call as the MD, not happening. You, Pappas, you started. I don't want to say it was controversial. I think that would be crossing a line, but you, back in the day, this must have been 6 years ago. I'm gonna guess you started the Pap-Hammer. Can you refresh our memories on what that is?
It is a dance move that I created because truthfully, I cannot dance, Grant, and you know this, and you still put me on the spot here. But I started doing it to a song, and I was in South Africa, and the pastor there at the church said, "Oh, is that the hammer?" Because it looked like I was, throwing down the hammer. And then our dear friend Aiden King, a member of Young and Free, renamed it the Pap-Hammer, and it was born. And it's stupid, but people it's actually crazy. Like, people really care about it. And on tour, I probably only do it once in a night now. I'm pretty over it. And if people missed it the one time, after, they'll be like, "Oh, you didn't do it. Oh, that's why I came." And I'm like, "Oh, so sad for you."
And so you have the Pap-Hammer. Do you have the Ben Saw, or the what's the equivalent for a guitar player?
The Ben Saw or a synth.
That's why I said it.
No, I'm not as inventive as Pappas, unfortunately.
Okay. With the dance moves, I mean, I've seen your tricks on guitar, which we'll probably get to a little bit later, but we'll just stop it at maybe not on the dance moves.
So bad at dancing.
Tricks. You've got your tricks.
My son looked at me the other day and was pressing these sounds, watching me to make moves for him to copy, and they are so bad. Pappas was like, "It looks like your kid is directing airplanes."
The best thing is that video is Levi was just doing this, and that is how Ben dances. We'll be on the bus and everyone's having a good time, and Ben's just Like, I don't know why you love the index finger, but music director can't help himself. He's like, let's go.
That's it. That's it. So what have you guys been up to during COVID to stay productive or make the most of your time? I assume you guys are mostly working from home.
We all moved back home. Well, I was already working from home, so this didn't really feel that different, except the workload got a bit bigger. And then we just finished our Young and Free album at the start of the year. So then when COVID hit, we were kind of just pumping out a bunch of like singles. So I had a lot of work with that. And then me and Pap have both been doing youth online because everything moved to online. So that's been a big chunk of us as well.
And writing new music.
Yeah.
Which actually, Ben, brings me to the point, perhaps before you go, what are all the different, we covered most of these, but did we miss any roles that you cover in Young and Free? You're a songwriter, producer, you play guitar, you're a music director, you also sing at least some of the songs, if not on every album. What am I missing?
I'd call myself a demo singer. Like I can pull it off with the auto-tune plugin pretty good.
Nice. All right. So that you actually do just about everything. I've also heard that you're just as good, if not better, at drumming than Brendan, your brother.
Yeah, I was better than Brendan in year 6.
Yep. That's what I thought. It comes across. Happy, what about yourself, man? What have you been up to during COVID and your roles within Young and Free?
Cool. I sing. I lead worship, if you will. I get to do. I always end up doing the church podcast because I guess I'm good at church. Don't know if that's true yet. We'll see. No, I play, and then I'll play a bit of guitar on the road. Ben usually has very little of me in his ears, which is offensive, to say the least. They never include me in the band photos. Like in the worship, I'm always like, guys, I come take photos with like the singers, and they're like, no. Refuse to let me take photos with the band. So I just have to Photoshop myself into those photos, and those have gotten a lot of traction. But anyway, no, and then also, so like half of my life is Young and Free, and the other half of my life is a creative pastor for 1/2 of our Australian campuses.
So you both, it's fair to say you both have your hands quite full, and you're probably dropping a couple balls just by being a part of this interview right now. Fair to say?
Nah, man, I'm super high capacity.
Oh, that's awesome. So I wanted to talk about, I guess, the start, if we can think way back to when you guys toured, when touring was allowed. When you guys are, let's say a tour just got announced and no preparation has happened. The songs have been written, but you have no idea what the set's going to look like, anything like that. Do you guys all come together as a band and singers and figure out what the set is going to look like for the tour? Or is it more something that, some of the worship leaders decide and then relay to the rest of the band?
I'd say for the big sets, like for the vast majority of the set, if we're doing like a new run, we will kind of plan it beforehand. So band and singers will kind of like come up with ideas, and whoever can spitball. And then from there, we will kind of run it all together. But what I would do is I would just make a plan, like a base before it. So when we get into rehearsal, it's not like everyone's like jamming. It's more like, okay, so like we made this, and then everyone's kind of heard how we go into this and this and this. And then I'd say on tour, if we, like Pat might be like, oh, I want to do this way and this way tonight because it feels like this should happen. Then we kind of tweak on tour. And then, yeah, Pappas has something to say about that.
Yeah, what Ben said is exactly right. And it's funny, like now, obviously, we're just releasing the 4th album. When we first started, we had, first started touring, we had 12 songs, and that was it. And so it just looked like kind of putting that jigsaw together. Like, these are the 12 songs. We're going to play them all. We're probably going to play some of them twice and to make a night long enough, and then just worked. Whereas now, obviously, when you have all these albums to pull from, and I suppose you're being pulled by, we want to play our new songs and like a lot of our new songs, but we also, like, people have come to see, like, doesn't matter how long you've been playing. Like, if you're, I was going to say AC/DC, but it's controversial, but if you're AC/DC and like, you might want to play your new songs, but like people are there to see Back in Black, like you're going to have to play like the songs as well. So now it's kind of like, all right, what songs do we want to add to our already like big bank of songs that people like need to hear? And so, like, yeah, exactly as Ben said, we'll get in the room and we'll kind of pre-pick like which songs we are going to play, and then just start working out parts, because obviously, like, we've played them on an album. In the past, we've done studio albums as well. So it's kind of like, what parts do we play live? Work that out. But it is quite communal in the sense of like what could we do? And like most of our special moments and intros literally happened out of like just creating. Might have started with one person's idea, but it birthed something that like we all sort of create together. And yeah, I mean, I would say worship leaders have obviously a bit of say. Like the person leading or singing the song obviously wants to feel like comfortable with it. But it's definitely true that you kind of, I think like for our last album 3, we reached like the last like month of the tour, and it was like the last month of like touring that album, and it was like, well, we finally nailed that set. Like, finally got it. Just like, oh, this tells the story.
Yeah.
Because obviously, we're not just picking songs we're trying to take people somewhere. And yeah, it was a little bit funny. We had a little bit of a lull at the end. Like, I wish we would have done it on the album this way. Like, kind of after playing it for 2 years, you're like, oh well. But it's fun.
I guess you don't always obviously have the luxury of writing 12 songs and getting them into like a tour environment before you record them all for 6 months of touring. And it's like, oh, this is how it needs to be. So you kind of have to do your best at the beginning. But even just listening to what you guys are saying so far, it sounds like the process that you guys have now is really polished as a whole. It seems really polished and works quite well. As in, Ben, you said you kind of come up with a skeleton for the first rehearsal, getting ready for a tour. Has it always been this polished from when you guys were back at 12 songs and it all kind of came together pretty much from rehearsal number 1? Or have you guys has this been kind of a long journey to get to this point that it all comes together quite seamlessly from my perspective listening?
I reckon the biggest difference now is we're trying to find like new things and different ways to transition into everything.
Yeah.
So I don't think we really did that at the start because we were all figuring ourselves out. But now it's like we have all this technology and we have so many ways we can change a track and make things cool into each other. Which is why it kind of ends up working this way to make it different from like any other live set, I guess.
Let's say, Ben, you have this awesome new sound. It's a great transition. Deep down, like, this is gonna absolutely slay live. People are gonna love it. And then Aiden comes along and he's like, no, don't like it. Like, what do you do in that kind of moment? How do you handle it? Who gets the final say? What's the next step?
This is what I reckon is like, I think the best thing about our guys and now our singers is that everyone's super open. So no one really shuts down anything before we try it that much. And I think that like once, like we're all pretty much on the same page. Is like, you can tell when you run something like on the night and you're like, oh, that was so bad. And then we're usually like, yeah, like if Aiden was like, hey, this really sucks and I really don't like it, I'd be like, yeah, I 100% agree with you. Because everyone's trying to like, no one's trying to power over each other. Everyone's just trying to go, I want the best thing for this night. So how do we fix it? And then we're just all looking at it from that point.
Yeah, I think what's cool about our crew is that, like, I mean, there are times where it's like, I'll use myself as an example. Like, I know this will work. Like, I know it can get there. And there is that level of like back and forth. Like, yeah, like Aiden on tour would be the one to like make the final decision. But there is like a cool, like if you think this will work, like we'll try it again. And there's times where I go like, you know, after 2 or 3 tries, I'm like, haha, I'm wrong. Sorry. Let's try something else. But you know, that it's obviously as far as a creative space, like if people are up for trying it, like it's just because like, especially for me, like, I mean, creatives, like musicians, artists, like there's a lot of ego in what we do. And like, you know, call it whatever you want. I think there's a good thing. Like there's good things that come out of being confident and sure of your ideas. Like, and if you don't get a chance to outwork it, like that's how you get that's how you get like artists and people that are just frustrated because they don't have that outlet. And like, I'd just be sitting there, like, if no one listened to me, I'd be sitting there like, oh, well, if we did my idea, this would be so much better. And like, yeah, having a space where we can try stuff, just like, I don't know, keeps everyone happy in a weird way to put it, but I think it really is important.
So let's say you were on with, just getting super practical. You're worship leading at youth. You have a newer guitar player on, and he decides to, you know, I don't know, rewrite the guitar part for, you know, Alive, and it does not go well. What's the conversation look like? Like, how would you practically go up? I know this would never happen, but how would you practically go about having that conversation with him so that you can still keep his, you know, confidence up while also letting him know that that idea he had just didn't work?
I'm so open to people like interpreting everything themselves and changing parts and all that. I think the difference is you can tell the person who knows the part and changed it, and the person who doesn't know the part and changed it to suit their part.
Yeah.
And when that happens, then I'm like, I usually just call it out. I'll just be like, hey, the guitar part's like this. And then more often than not, there's a respect there to be like, oh yeah, I'll just do the guitar part. But yeah, I would never, like, if I know someone knows the part and they're making another part that sounds cool, I would never be like, hey, why aren't you playing my part?
Yeah.
Unless it was on a super tight tour and we're trying to get everything like to merge with the track. So like, if someone makes up a line and it's clashing with the track, I'd be like, hey, go to the other part because this one's not working.
I mean, as far as like, because obviously church is a bizarre like setting for this. Like anybody who's watching this that doesn't do church, you have no idea or don't relate. But as a pastor, I would just say like, it kind of just shows like, that just shows like where I me as a leader, I need to establish relationship and rapport off the platform. Because if I'm just a legend that's like, hey dude, like that sucks, like get out of here. Like, and then that's it, that's the only interaction, then like there's going to be no respect and there's going to be no loyalty, which I'm not going to get into that. But like, to me, like you can't do creative church teams without like me showing them my team loyalty and then seeing it back. So like, but if I've done my job well beforehand, like, because I had people when I was coming through, like, and I changed a part and they just smashed me. And like, but it, like, I needed that to become the musician I am today. And so like, it's tricky, but yeah, I agree 100% with Ben said. And Ben, I've seen is so gracious with people with that stuff. I am not. I'm kind of like, hey, you going to play the part? I've probably called you out about a part before, Grant. Sorry. But like one time when front of house sent your dirty channel left and your clean channel like in front of house.
Yep.
Big mistake. Your tone sounded very boring from the left side of the room. But no, yeah, like I'd just say like it just goes to show like how well we like work with these people on the side, because then that moment is like, hey man, just play the part, and if they don't know it, this is it.
So along the same lines, and this is kind of a bigger picture question, but let's go within Young and Free. How important would you say keeping up the culture that you guys want to see in Young and Free is?
Yeah, I just think like community is king, like for us. And like, obviously, like, you know, some of us sometimes tour with some of the other bands that come out of our church. And then obviously we'll do tours with other bands all together. And this is no slight on anyone else whatsoever. I just think we have something strangely special that like we do everything together. Like, so it's not like when we show up to sound check and rehearse and then play, and it's like the first time we've seen each other that day, and it's like, oh, like, you know, you do your own thing, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's literally like we wake up and it's just like, where are we all going to coffee? Where are we all going to lunch? Like, we're all going to play golf. We're all going to go play tennis. We're all going to do this. And so like, yeah, the culture is so important that like you have to strive to keep. It's just bizarre that it comes so naturally. It's not something the community that we've had to like fight for. And it just means like all that stuff is super simple. And yeah, there's times where people get frustrated. Like one time Ben hit me in the head with his guitar and it turned into a big fiasco. But like more or less, like we're literally, no pun intended, all of my best friends, we are like all best friends on the road and love being together. So
I kind of see, like, I see bands, like not even just in church, but all bands they really do act like little families. So me and Brennan like can say nothing to each other and know what's going on kind of thing. Where like, I'm sure someone like Pappas would have like quite a like deep conversation if something's going on. So it's like different families operate differently. So for us, what we found is like this young and free thing, everyone just like grew up hanging out this way. So this is what feels so natural to us and it makes us happy. So
Yeah, I like it. That's awesome. But that wouldn't, maybe for some of the people watching, that wouldn't be the case, naturally speaking. And not everyone would find that it comes that easily as what you guys have described. So, I mean, if you guys could boil it down to a couple things in terms of keeping the culture strong, what would be some of the key elements you say contribute most to keeping the culture in Young and Free the way that it is?
well, I'll get a little churchy for a second, but like I don't think we could be the way we are without Jesus, and that being the main thing, and also the main thing being like we're not there to put on a show, and that is not our perspective, and it's not the way we travel, and it's not the way we do it. And so I would just say, like, if you don't have that, like, just keep realigning perspective. And something we started doing a couple years ago was literally just like super intentional, like prayer meetings and worship, and just like, and obviously everybody sort of does that, but like, you know, lots of church teams would do that. Someone's going to pray, but it kind of had this like rotation where even someone that wouldn't normally speak out is going to share or speak. And then like we went around the room after that person shared and everybody encouraged that person. And it was kind of like this long thing, but like at the time, like we really needed that like refocus, and like this is why we're doing it. This is what we're all going this way. And I mean, I think again, I just add, like Ben was saying, like with a family, like you also, the people you love the most have the tendency to annoy you the most. Like, so you can definitely, like, someone could be like I'm sure all the time I am on the edge of someone's nerves because I can't stop doing impressions on the tour. Like, just Melody has definitely one time told me that my impressions weren't funny, but luckily, I think it was Ben, it might have been Furby, was like, I think they're funny. And I was like, oh.
they legitimately are funny.
Thank you, man. I need to hear this. But I mean, but like, you know, even if you're not a worship band, like realign, like even just being like, this is why we do it. Like, cause nobody's touring and creating music. I mean, they might be, but nobody's really just because like, just cause like I like to have a good time. Like most people write music to like connect with people, to speak to people. Like people write songs, like you write songs because you have something to say, and people that have nothing to say kind of write the worst songs. And so like if you've got something to say, like, and you're a band, like let's be like, this is what we're going to say tonight. And if the message isn't Jesus and the message is this, like align under that vision.
I love it. And I love that you're saying that it is a family, which also means that you are not always going to get along. I assume that means if something is, let's say between you and Ben, something is not 100% right for that evening of the tour, that if you let it go unsaid and go on stage and try and lead people in your guys' context in worship, it'll get in the way. Again, practically, what do you guys do to not let those little arguments, disagreements, annoyances detract from either the show if you're not a church band, or the worship night if you are? Like, what do you do to keep that the main thing?
You know what I've learned over all this time, because I'm pretty passive, I'm like extremely passive, is that it is way easier for me to, if I have a problem with Pap, to just text him after the show if I don't want to see, like if I can't see his face, and just be like, hey, like this really like hurt me, or this like what's going on with this, like, because usually it's just miscommunication as well, more than anything. And that's what I've learned, just like uncover it and then move on, like you're best friends anyway. And then rather than holding on to it and being like, Pap did this because in my mind he did this and then that hurt, and I'm never gonna forgive him, kind of thing. So it's way easier that way than the other way.
Like, so I'm literally asking people to be humble, essentially. Like, if I'm pushing my agenda or my idea, I'm asking people to be humble. And this is absolutely not something I've nailed, and I'm sort of just enlightened and figuring it out. But like, I always want to be the kind of person that if I ask you to do this, like that I'm working on it, I'm doing it as well. So like for me as well, just to be like, okay, just be humble. And so like if Ben texts me and goes like, hey, this was a little bit rough, this was weird, and I can just kind of go like, oh, I mean, obviously part of me is not going to like it. And I'm like, oh, I don't like that you see things that way. You see it wrong. But like, it's the way he sees it. And so like, that requires me to be humble. So like, if we can figure out the dichotomy of like living in that space, like I think it alleviates all that tension real quick.
Yeah. If you guys ever, kind of touching on what you just said, Paps, if you guys ever have a night where something did go quite wrong, let's say you're on tour and something flopped and it was obvious, do you guys ever go into the next night of tour a little bit nervous, a little bit unsure, or do you have ways of making sure that it doesn't affect the next night or the next city or whatever's coming up?
I don't know. I feel like we've definitely had some bad nights, like things going wrong, like things failing, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I think again, it does come down to that, just like refocus. And I'm probably not the best person to speak on it, because I don't really struggle with nerves. Because when I was a little kid, my sister and I would take piano lessons, and she was 10 times better at piano than I am. And I'm still trash at piano, but like she was so good. And like, we both loved like the chance to get to play, but she would get so nervous and like totally fail. Hi, Amy. That was nice. And like, yeah, so she would this blah, 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 and it just ruined the whole experience because she was nervous. And then we got older in high school. She was a singer. She'll never hear this, Bo. Totally throwing her on the bus. But I kind of decided early on, I was like, man, why would you ruin like something you love to do, like getting to play music for people, by like ruining it by only being nervous? And because especially for me, like I can't multitask to save my life. So if I'm being nervous, I'm literally doing nothing else. Like, it might be happening, but I'm being nervous. And so like, for me, it's always been that like choice, like, no, like, I'm going to focus on like, this is actually what I love. Like, this is what I feel like I was made to do. And so, yeah, like if there's any ever like nerves and stuff, if there's for anyone else, it is kind of comes down to that, like, hey, we've done all the things, like we've checked all the things again. It's not going to fail. And sometimes it does a second time, you know, praise God. But more or less, like kind of just that like refocus, recenter, and let's like put the best foot forward.
Ben, you have written quite a few of the songs as well within Young and Free, but oftentimes, again, correct me if I'm wrong, oftentimes you're not the one singing them. You'll be the one music directing them and playing guitar. What does it feel like having someone else moving around and manipulating your songs on a tour night to suit maybe that evening for a song that you've written, and they're doing their own interpretation of it? Do you ever get a little protective of the songs you've written and wanting them to be done a specific way, or is it easy to hold it with open hands?
It's pretty easy to trust our crew because like everyone nails it pretty well, and like because I'm able to music direct it, I guess I have the trust with everyone. So we just work on it until it's really good.
Yeah.
And that's same with everyone's song. So I get like everyone feels the same way. So if you had a good song and then this is where it's hard is like if you had a good song and someone did it and repped it badly and people suddenly didn't like the song because of the way it was manipulated or like changed, then that's when it's like, hey, we need to really figure this out. But in terms with our tour nights and all that, like it's pretty polished by then. So it's just like a pretty amazing feeling watching like your song being sung and people singing it back. It's like the best feeling ever.
I can only imagine. I've had my shot at songwriting and none of them have been picked up yet, which was also part of why I wanted to do this interview so I could show you guys what I've written.
Screen share that. Let's hear it.
I wish I actually had something prepared because that would have been the perfect moment to just show you a flop.
You should have had a diss track at me, man. That really would have put icing on the cake. What most people don't know this is Grant and I really despise each other. Mortal enemies, in fact.
Yeah, it's actually publicly known in Sydney.
It's in Sydney campus.
Yep.
Sydney City. Tongue twister. Enemies.
Yep.
Diss track. Next time, come prepared.
It's actually part of the reason why I moved to Canada. I couldn't take the conflict anymore. Me and Ben are on the same page, you know, we're a little passive and we don't like conflict. So here I am in Canada and you're staying in Sydney with your partner. So I was hoping to, by this point, have you guys say that you disagree about something, but it hasn't happened. It sounds like you guys actually really get along genuinely. So
we probably had a couple of disagreements at the front end of this whole thing, like at the start of Young and Free stuff. It wasn't even disagreements, it was just like I just didn't understand why Pap would want to do that, and he wouldn't understand why I wouldn't follow him as hard as I could, kind of thing. But
I also know that Ben can't read lips.
Thank you. I'm starting to think though, because the more MDs I talk to, a lot of them cannot read lips, and the MD gets blamed. Ben, I hope you're on my side here.
You don't know the stress of not being able to read lips.
Exactly. I think it's the worship leaders that can't speak without talking. I think that's the real issue.
I'm just gonna say that I was a MD for many years, and I can read lips. Okay, so it was fine. In my head, it's easy.
The feeling you get though, like I was on once, I wasn't MDing, someone else was MDing, and then whoever was Wesh pleading, I can't remember, it was probably like Joel or someone was saying something and they couldn't read it. And I was like, they're saying go to the bridge. And I've never felt so good about myself.
You can take that one to the grave, man.
We had one time that this is a kind of a funny story because it got me in a lot of trouble. Thanks, Ben. We've never talked about it, airing our grievances. So I had like a towel over my shoulder and I had this like vocoder thing, like this little vocoder pedal that I would use for this one intro. And like I would we didn't have a stage tech at the time. So like any changes, anything was doing, like we were doing it, like running all around stage. So I run up, like have to get it set. And like, I guess we were in like South America and it had got crushed, like the pedal. So like the dial that I needed to change it, like wasn't working, but like I hadn't figured it out yet. And so Ben's like, all right, fire the next song. And I'm just like, no. And I assumed he knew what no meant. But he's just like, and I'm like, and I'm like trying to like make it work. And then I mean, to be fair, it was never going to work. It was broken, but I didn't realize at that point. And Ben just like, yep, fire it. And it just like was a mess. And I just like took my towel and I like threw it on the ground. And then like we came home and our leader, our bosses, our pastors, I got in a lot of trouble for throwing the towel because Ben ratted me out.
What you see is like, man, Pappas just got angry and threw the towel on the ground. I don't know what's going on, but he's so mad at all of us. It's all just miscommunication.
I can only think of the Tim Tebow story.
What's that one?
We were like a key headline act for this conference, and Tim Tebow is a famous like athlete, and he was there. He was
Nice.
supposed to do an altar call, and he was supposed to have like 10 minutes. And then we were supposed to do the main part of our set at the end. We would have 45 minutes at the end. And old Timmy Tebow he spoke for an hour. He did an altar call for an hour, and then they're like, you guys have 5 minutes at the end. And all of us just like, because we're excited to play. It's like 10,000 young people, more, maybe 14,000. We're like stoked to play here, stoked to play our new songs. And we did nothing. We flew to Alabama from Australia just to hear Tim Tebow's altar call. God bless you, Tim. I actually love you, Tim. You're a good guy.
So for that 5 minutes, though, how did you not let that be a huge letdown and show on your faces and how you led? Like, how do you just have to suck it up and just do it?
This would actually be one of those times of like miscommunication. Ben's obviously getting communicated to someone on the side. And like probably Eli, our tour manager. Obviously, we go into a worship song. We've talked about all these different plans, what we're going to do. And I remember we go into a song called When the Fight Calls. And I'm trying to make it a ministry moment. Probably like, let's go somewhere. Like, I'm getting them hyped. I'm just like, come on, like, full of faith. Rah, 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 rah. And then I'm just like, all right, now, like, let's sing it. And Ben's like, we have to finish. Big finish. And it's like, and I'm just like, I also do not have a poker face, which Grant probably knows as well. Like when something goes wrong, I'm literally just like,
Yeah.
what are you? What? When I look at my non-poker face, I'm like, man, it's really ugly. So I'm gonna work on it.
Your other one isn't too much better.
But a little bit, Grant.
Okay. All right. We're looking for
But a little.
improvements. I really wanted to finish with, let's say COVID has just finished. People are getting ready to go back out on tour again. And there is a band that just got signed and they're going out on their first tour. What advice would you guys give them? Keep going long-term as a band with great culture moving forward.
Do the little things. Like do the little hangouts that like don't cost you anything. Because I think in the long run, like making room to hang out with your best friends is like always gonna down the track. You'll be like, oh wow, we really came a long way because we kept doing that.
And you guys, and I guess the thing, like people that haven't been on tour yet, myself included, you're stuck with these people for better or worse on that tour. Hey, like you're on a small bus, you're in tiny hotel rooms. So if you don't get along, it's going to be, I assume, quite miserable.
Yeah, I'd say my top tip would be it's kind of answers your question is like fight for fun. And that's, I love alliteration. Fight for the culture of like it being a good time. I mean, I imagine like I've not had this experience, but friends who've been in other bands that have folded, like it's definitely the common thread is like it wasn't fun. Like I didn't want to be there. And so like if you want to do it for a long time, like having fun, it might just happen, but also like inevitably it's going to turn it like it will be your job. Like it's not glamorous. Like we're not staying in amazing hotels. Like some nights we have a couple days off and we're literally just staying on the bus parked. But as long as like we're just like still fighting for that culture of like this is like the best thing ever, we're never going to stop like because like we're over it. Like we might stop because we're far from young, far from free, but like as far as that goes, like we're all in.
If Young and Free ended tomorrow, speaking of the fun factor that you're just talking about, for both of you guys, what would you look back as being the number one best moment you've ever had with Young and Free, if you had to choose one?
I don't know why this is so special to me, but there was one time where we all rented bikes in Europe. It was just the greatest day, and we were just all ride. It was like you with your 15 friends were like all riding as a bike gang through the park. And I don't know why that image in my head is like just the best thing I've ever experienced.
And it was friendly to the planet. So thank you. No carbon emissions.
Yeah. Go here.
Pappy?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously things that jump out are like certain shows, certain events that we did that were amazing. But I would have to agree with Ben. Like honestly, the first thing that like jumped in my head is like literal just like nonsense like on the bus. Like after a show, like which again, like bus is crammed, it's tight, it's a bit smelly, and all this stuff. But I'll look back and I'd just be like, man, like I've never laughed harder. Like I've never had like a more of a better time. And obviously there's countless amazing God moments. Like don't get me wrong, but yeah, I mean, like getting to do it with your best buds is insane.
Pappy, I know I would be one of your best friends, which is why
You are, Grant. You are.
don't interrupt me, which is why you named your guys' most recent album release after our relationship. Can you guys tell us about what just happened? Was it last Friday, Ben, you were saying?
Yeah, it was last Friday.
Tell us about it. What just happened? What was the big
I think
event
we're gonna keep
this
talking.
past Friday?
We released our latest album, All My Best Friends. We're really proud of it. I think it's really good.
It's fun, it's upbeat, it's a party, and there's something for everybody. If you listen to that whole album, you're gonna find something you love. Don't care who you are. And if you disagree, message me, and I will probably not see it.
And iTunes, Spotify, all the normal places, correct?
Yep.
All the places, Napster, LimeWire, check it out.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for your time, your insight, and your experience in sharing it with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Love.